Hello, we have in our studio today Abhijit. Abhijit, thank you so much for joining us in our fourth annual Netreo User Group Get Together. It's such a pleasure to be speaking with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. It's my pleasure to be on this show talking to you, and I am sure we will be having a very enriching discussion. Look forward to our discussion. Thank you.
Excellent. Could you tell us a little bit more about the bank?
Well, HDFC Bank has now been more than 2 decades and operating in this country. It has always maintained the status quo of being the number one private bank in the country. With the recent merger and acquisition of the HDFC Limited and the subsidiary companies, HDFC Bank today ranks the fifth largest bank in the globe. From the size of the bank, majorly we are kind of concentrated in India. At the moment that we speak, we roughly would have 7,200 odd branches which are operational, and the management plans to add another 6,000 odd branches in the next 3 years.
Wow, that's fantastic. So, what do you do at this bank?
Well, I oversee the core network and the security operations, which means the complete interconnectivity of the branches to the data center, the connectivity of the data center itself, the connectivity to the cloud, and obviously the overall security posture in terms of, right from an endpoint connecting to the network to what the endpoint can do, who accesses what, why, where, when, and obviously in today's world, the cybersecurity and the perimeter security, which has kind of taken the center stage, if I may say, that also is something that I look after.
That is fantastic. Does monitoring differ, across different industries, or are they pretty much the same? What would you say are some of the characteristics?
Very interesting question, Jasmine. For a bank like us, who are very deep entrenched into transactions, like in India, the story of the digital payment and the UPI payments in India, right? Mm-hmm. About 2 to 60% of the payments in India happen by using the UPI interface. Now that puts pressure back on us, and how it is, because so I'm bothered about if the utilization is touching a 70 or an 80% breach, but I'm equally interested to know if it is dropping below a 30%, because the moment it does, the partner will put my payment channel off the hook. Say, for example, if there is an Amazon, the bank is connected to Amazon today, and you as a customer, you're trying to purchase something from Amazon, right? And you want to make a payment using HDFC Bank, and if there is a problem, before cursing the bank, you would possibly curse Amazon, right? And Amazon is very sensitive to it, right? What Amazon does is that it monitors the health of each of the banking channels that they are connected to. And if they see that there is a problem, they'll pull the channel down, which means that next time you want to go and make a payment from Amazon, just after maybe 5 minutes, you wouldn't see HDFC Bank reflecting there. What happens is that I lose business. So I'm equally interested in seeing what's happening upwards. I'm equally interested in seeing what's happening downwards. Not too many industries would do it.
Wow, so it's mission critical with a real sort of financial outcome as well.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. And if there are transaction declines, that happens, right? If there are transaction declines, I need to be capable of figuring it out real time what's causing that transaction decline. Is it a technical reason for the transaction decline? If yes, where? Is it a non-technical reason for the transaction decline? Yeah, so I mean, the monitoring on transactions is super heavy. So the other piece which is important in a transaction-based industry, like a bank, is you've got to be capable of using a monitoring system which gives you intelligent reports which can be used to look at your capacity. How good, bad, ugly are you doing on your capacity? Does it need an upgrade? Or have you or it's giving you signals that your configurations are not optimized? You've got to look at that. Yeah, so you may have one link which is lying absolutely unutilized, whereas you may see the other link which is completely utilized, right? You've got to take an action on that. So that's very important for us.
That makes a lot of sense. And, as I'm looking at this, you're talking about whether it's the technical issues of the transaction. What are some of these technical issues? I'm guessing a lot of it might be network or.
There is a huge chain to it. Let me kind of start off by a very simple example that we do. When we are on the Amazon website and I'm wanting to buy a phone, maybe a mobile phone, right? And I initiate a transaction. It starts right from my mobile device. That could be the problem. It could be the mobile network. That could be the problem. It could be the Amazon servers. That could be the problem. It could be the connectivity between Amazon and bank. That could be the problem. Once it reaches the bank, there is a whole list of devices that the transaction goes through. You've got to be capable of then, in a live environment, tracing that session and that flow of that application that the end user initiated, right? So you've got to have a session ID. Using that session ID, you've got to trace the flow back and forth, and then be capable of detecting what's gone wrong where.
That makes a lot of sense. So everything needs to be connected, and
Yeah.
and you have to be able to correlate that as well
Very
with
important.
each other's.
Yes, very important.
And now let's talk a little
Yeah.
bit more about the next phase, which is perhaps predictive analysis. So looking at some of all this to maybe identify potential weaknesses in the system. Is that something that you're starting to look at as well?
Oh yes. So and this is one of my very favorite topics, because point number one is that you have a ticket, you are dead, because you already have a ticket. I mean,
Yep.
the damage is done. Now you're going to fix it right now. The other piece of it is, how do you figure out that you are going to have a ticket? Okay? That's the predictivity piece of it. I'll give you an example. Now you've set a CPU utilization on a core equipment. You've set it, just to be on the safer side, you've set it at 50%, right? So you're saying that if the CPU utilization hits 50%, I need an alert. So what is an alert? It'll actually generate a ticket, and someone will pick up the ticket and go and look at it, right? And try and see what's happened and try and correlate. Is this momentary, or is this a regular behavior? That's okay. Let me kind of make life a bit difficult and say that there were 3 instances in a week where it touched 49% but didn't touch the 50. Now you don't have a ticket, but you will be dead very soon. Yeah, because it's 49%, right? It'll hit 50% and you'll be dead by that, right? Now, that is where we need a lot of intelligence. We need a lot of AI ML algorithms working. And in my own terminology, I call it the PPM, proactive problem management.
Love it.
49% from a single CID, same error, same CID. It has not touched your threshold yet, but you need to look at it. This should generate a problem ticket to the problem management team. Now, this team is not an operations team, Jasmine. This team is the health monitoring team, right? They are, in fact, they consist of people who are only L3s and L4s. Yeah, because if you have, what will you do? You have a high utilization on a router, you go and check, there is a traffic which is causing this high utilization. Either you shut down the traffic or you route the traffic to somewhere else, right? To some other device. That's operations. Proactive problem management ensures that you should not have such problem. They should be able to come and tell you, see, we observe that 3 times in a week this has happened, and our analysis shows that an X application is generating this traffic, which is causing this problem. Now, we've got to go back to the application owner, figure out why is that happening. I jokingly keep referring to it so that, you would be well aware, in the IP network, you have a TTL, which is time to live. Yeah. So when you do proactive monitoring, you should be capable of defining your TTD, which is time to die.
Okay.
Yeah. So you should be able to arrive there.
Love it.
So TTLs are okay. TTLs are there, have been there for a pretty long time now. You've got to be capable with your TTDs now.
Nice. Love it. So it's not necessarily, I think, where we're leaning towards, it's not just up or down, whether the system is working. It's really how well the system is moving now, so that we're actually monitoring the continuous heartbeat in that sense.
And we've got to be able to correlate a lot. Say, for example, when you're kind of running any equipment, what are the so you would have CPU, you would have memory. These are the 2 major elements, right? Maybe buffers, okay. Then you've got to be correlating what type of traffic, what sort of latency, what sort of packet losses, and correlated back to the CPU, memory, and buffer. That, if not available, kind of will not help me reach my TTDs.
Nice, love it. We talk about it from a systemic perspective, but are you also
Yeah.
looking at the customer experience in terms of, when you're setting up these KPIs, right?
Yeah. See, for me and my team, the customer are the application teams, right? Who in turn have their regular customers. So from our perspective, what we also do, Jasmine, and very good question, what we also do is that we do a lot of synthetic monitoring, which means that we look at the monitoring. See, generally a monitoring would be set up inside out. The reason, and I'm not mincing my words here, the reason that people set up monitoring tools is to make that statement, gentlemen, it's not my fault. Because I have the data, it's not my fault. That's the only reason that major people put it up. Now, that's an inside out story. That's not my fault, right? What's the outside in story? I don't care. I've been trying to do a mobile banking transaction with your bank. It just doesn't work, or it is slow. Now, your network may be fine. I don't care. How does it matter to me? I've still not been able to make my transaction. So you've got to be having that capability of doing that outside in monitoring, whatever it reports, at that point in time, pick up the data. And this, obviously, the monitoring tool may or may not be able to do. You've got to be running some additional capabilities of automation and using AI and ML is, take the synthetic monitoring data, take the inside out, data, be correlate and see where are these two not seeing eye to eye? Because if something is not being seen eye to eye, is where you have a problem.
That's incredible. And so infrastructure,
and we do this, and we do this only for the customer facing problems. Otherwise, it'll be but because we feel if we do it for everything, it'll be too much of data, and we possibly would be overwhelmed, right? So we do it only for the customer facing applications.
That makes sense. And so what we're talking about here is how important infrastructure monitoring is to monitoring digital customer experiences as well, whether they're consuming it via their mobile phones or for their website, for the Amazon transactions and the like.
Yeah, in fact, if you happen to speak to a lot of people, which you do, if you look at how monitoring has evolved. So yesteryears we used to be bothered only about monitoring links and CPUs and memories, right? Today on the devices, you have hard disks, right? Because the software-enabled devices have hard disks inside them, because a lot of the program and a lot of their operating systems today reside either on the hard disks or on their flash drives, right? Today, if a device malfunctions and if you've got to reboot the device, you may have a problem. So today I go and monitor what's the health of the sectors on each of those hard disks. And are there bad sectors? If that is noticed, we kind of look at how to fix it. We don't want to have a booting problem anytime. Nice. Yeah, because see, what happens is that when and where I'm coming from, Jasmine, is you would kind of, if you're using whichever bank you use today, what's your expectation from the bank on their mobile banking application? It would be 100% anytime, wherever it should work.
Yeah.
Now, if that is the expectation from an application, the infrastructure has to be 120%. Yeah. So in terms of resiliency, in terms of availability, and in terms of error-free, you've got to be 120% for an application to be running at 100%. That's the challenge.
That's fantastic. Now, that's a lot that we're monitoring in terms of the entire infrastructure as we look at HDFC Bank, right? So how much of that is actually automated versus humanly done?
Well, the the ticketing is definitely automated. Yeah, we are working towards getting, looking at kind of triaging a few of the faults. So when you look at a network, you have configurations. You can make errors while configuring a network, right? You can make errors while pushing new configurations into the network, right? And you can have so different devices may require different set of configurations. One single command line may not work across all the devices. right? Saying that these are the list of 200 devices. The schedule is between 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. This configuration should get pushed into those devices. Now, that doesn't end here. The story just has about begun, right? The next ask is, I've pushed it into 200 devices. How many of them has it actually gone through? Where is that compliance report? So you may see that out of the 200, the configurations has gone to 190, the 10 failed. For whatever reason they failed, we'll figure it out. But I need that report with the devices that failed, right? Last but not the least, and the very important piece of it, Jasmine, is that if something is to go wrong because you've made that configuration changes, you have to roll back. Like you scheduled the configuration push, you should be capable of rolling back the configuration with a single click. And I just imagine that, in the morning you want to log into 200 different routers and pulling back configurations. It'll take 20 days, right? So you're out dead by that time. So these pieces of automation, now some pieces of it come built in with the network management systems, and some piece of it, you've got to take the data from the network management system, put it into some other platform, maybe an Ansible platform. There are other platforms, but I generally try and use the Ansible platform. And you kind of do that. Sometimes the other piece of it, which is important, is when I'm making a configuration. Suppose, there already is a configuration in the equipment. I'm wanting to make a configuration change. I know what changes I have to make right now. I have two configuration files already. One file is what is already running in the device, which is, I call it as the as-is configuration, right? The second file is the to-be configuration. The capability of the tool or the application to be able to compare these two configuration files and tell me that, Abhijit, these are the lines of difference in configurations between the as-is and between the to-be. You may want to look at the differences and take a conscious call before you actually push the configuration. Right? That saves a lot of error, because just let me give you a simple example. Suppose in the as-is configuration, you have a port which is operational. In the to-be configuration, you have shut it down for some reason, okay? Now, when you review the configuration the tool will tell you that here the port is operational, the same port in your to-be configuration, you've shut it down, and it is a trunk port. Access port is okay. Trunk port means you're carrying multiple VLANs there, right? You better be careful what you're doing. Yeah, if it is okay, it's okay. If it's not, at least it's telling you, go and have a look at it.
Right. That's
very important.
That's great, because I think, we've discussed a lot today so far. We talked about how, from a basic perspective, there's a lot of customer experience, that infrastructure is so critical to leveraging. And then we talked about how we are not just looking at whether things are up or down these days. We're looking at whether when they're going to die. So it's not just about the availability of something, whether something's working, but how well it is working from a continuous monitoring perspective. And then we are leveraging.
It's very important. I always keep, sorry for interrupting. I always keep saying this. If you have fever, and someone treats you for the fever, you will possibly have the fever again.
Yeah.
Because fever, possibly majority of the times, that fever is just a symptom of some whatever diagnosis or monitoring tool that you use should be capable of telling you that fever is a symptom. That's fine, but the problem is X. Go and treat X. Because if you just treat the fever, 2 days later, you'll have that fever again. Guaranteed.
Totally. So we always talk about root cause analysis, right?
Yes, very important.
Into understanding all that. And when you're monitoring all the pieces, it seems you can actually tell where the weakest link is as well. That's fantastic. So talking about the availability, the continuous monitoring, we also talked a lot about the automation side of things to sort of drive to be efficient in this whole process. We talked about leveraging AI ML for some of the predictive monitoring capabilities. Now, everyone's also talking as we think about the different things that the bank might want to do. How, when it comes to AI ML, how do you think that's going to change the future of monitoring?
Excellent question, Jasmine. And I'm a very, very strong supporter of something called the AIOps. Okay. In AIOps, it's a complete workflow-based management system, right? So what you've got to do, and in that AIOps, there are three distinctive areas. First is detect. Second is report. Third is remediate. And after the remediation, you again got to go and detect and report, saying that you have remediated it well, right? Now, say for example, I'm giving you I'm picking an example, a very crude and a very easy example. Maybe life is not as easy though. Say for example, on one of the Ethernet ports, you see CRC errors increasing. Now you've kind of set a rule saying that if the CRC errors increase beyond an X point, you need a ticket, right? Now, when the ticket comes, now what happens? Someone has to log into the router and check and etc. and all that. Now, the first thing is that capability to detect. Okay. Second is the capability to report. So now, once you have detected, you report it, it fires a ticket into the ITSM. From the ITSM, you backfire it to the automation system or the tool, saying that go and remediate. So there is a set of commands that you provide for that particular error, and the automation tool would go and fire that error. First, it will log in, capture, fire the command, remediate, capture the log again, come back to the ITSM tool and say, here is the log, close the ticket, right? And that report again comes back to the reporting dashboard saying that this is what has happened. So what's important, and I missed possibly the fourth piece of it. One is the detect, report, and remediate. The fourth piece of it, important for our environment, is audit. What are the audit logs available? Right. So you've got to be capable of capturing all of that. And this, so suppose if someone says, again, I have a latency between an X point and Y point, what do an engineer do? He or she will log into 2 different routers, fire some 5 different commands, take some data points, and then do whatever he or she has to do, right? This can all be automated. You kind of run scripts which will say, okay, these are the hosts, kind of pick up those hosts, and through the tool, you kind of run those commands, capture the data, triage the data. Now, there are 2 things. You may want to do an automated remediation, or you may want to do a remediation by intervention. So for certain cases, you may want to do it automated because it's non-critical. But in the critical cases, I would still suggest that someone does a intervention, because whether that's the right thing to do. See, an algorithm will follow commands, right? So for example, if the algorithm says bounce the port, it will bounce it. But at that point of time, if there's a live transaction going on, maybe a voice call or a payment transaction, it'll drop, right? Is it the right thing to do at that point in time? No. A human can take that call saying that, okay, let's not do it now. We'll do it during the lean hours, but let's park this ticket, right? That's the overall piece of automation piece of, see, I would say the motivation to look at an AIOps model is to first look at cutting down all your manual work. Secondly, cutting down your repetitive work. Third is how, so if there is a ticket volume that you have, which is the tickets that you get onto your ITSM due to your operations, right? Can you start with a modest target of cutting down at least 15% of volume of the ticket flow? Because then you will free up your L2s and L3s to do the PPMs, which is far more important than just looking at those tickets.
Great point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. So that's a lot of great insight as we think about the impact of AIOps, right? And how that can really help transform monitoring as a business. And it looks like as we look at the business of tomorrow, there's going to be even more digital businesses. Customer experience is going to be even more important. The applications team is going to be coming up with their own applications. So it's not just monitoring third-party applications, but also like Amazons of the world, but also your own banking applications that they will want to have. And that customer experience will need to continue to be monitored too. So it's just going to...
Yeah, in fact, to an extent, when we are connected to public clouds like Amazon, I keep monitoring parameters, not only link up, down, or latency, or etc. and all. I look at how many routes is Amazon sending to me. If I see a disparity, I fire an auto ticket back to Amazon saying that you guys generally send me 2,000 routes. Why are you suddenly sending me 4,000? What has changed? If there is something that has changed, I don't know. Let's talk to each other so that I also kind of change my configurations accordingly. And if nothing has changed, there is something wrong. Let's go back, identify, and fix it. Because I don't want my routers flooded with your routes. So, I generally, coined this term called the PPTA, and I think a good monitoring and a management system should be able to these are the four pillars of the PPT. I'll spell it out. The first P is for people. The second P is for process. The T is for tools and technology. And the last A is for analytics and automation, and all in that order.
Love it.
Right? Any of the management tool, application, automation, whatever you've got to do, it's got to fit into either of those four pillars. Now, if anything falters today in a dynamic, environment, you're sure to have a problem. People talk about automation. Do you have analytics? If the answer is no, what automation will you do? Can't work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
That's right.
You can't even start working, right? So, and that's why I said that chronology is important.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Abhijit. It's been truly enlightening. Your PPTA as well, something very interesting to take away from the conference. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jasmine. It's been my pleasure. Look forward to seeing you again. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. Bye for now.